Hello and welcome to this video overview of pulled lists for patient registrations. My name's Ryan Taylor and I work for the communications team within PCSE.
Hiya, and my name is Kat Van Paris. I work for the patient services team, and we're going to be talking today about what a pulled list is and essentially why they exist.
We're also going to be looking at how a pulled list can benefit you and your practice. So let's get started. So yeah, first thing let's look at then, Kat. What are pulled lists?
So NHS was first developed when the concept of family doctors existed. Therefore, it runs on the basis that GPs are associated to a practice but hold individual lists of patients. In order to register patients to individual GPs, they are set up on NHS using a local GP code with their GMC number and their national or prescriber code. The GP is then set up on the clinical system with the same local GP code, GMC number and prescriber code. When a practice is submitting a new registration and they select the registered GP, the local GP code and GMC number associated with that GP are transmitted through GP links to NHS. NHS maps these codes to the corresponding doctor on NHS so that the patient is registered to the correct GP. The 2004 GP contract removed the concept of individual lists of patients against GPs, and it introduced the concept of patients being registered to the practice. This is supported by NHS using pooled lists, a dummy GP with the same codes as above that patients can be registered to. This is seen as being registered to the practice.
That's great, Kat, thank you. So I suppose my next question then is, what is the issue with individual lists?
So one big issue is that when a GP resigns or retires from a GP practice, their local GP code on NHS is cancelled, meaning nothing further can be processed on NHS under that code. This means that patients must be transferred to the remaining GPs within the practice on both NHS and the clinical system at the GP. Each of these systems must be updated separately and on the same day to minimise the risk of any errors as a result of a GP leaving a practice. Should practices fail to carry out the bulk transfer on the clinical system, any amendments they make to existing patient details or deduction requests will be excluded from automatic processing, and exceptions will be reported on an unmatched transaction report, UTR. This results in NHS not holding the most up-to-date information for patients, and it creates discrepancies in patient information across the clinical system and the two national registration databases, NHS and the SPINE PDS. This can have clinical implications to the patient, who may not receive invites to NHS health screening programmes such as cervical, breast and bowel cancer screening. New registrations where the practice have selected the now cancelled GP will be excluded for manual processing. This causes potential delays in the processing of registrations. Also, GPs who work across multiple practices require a different local code for each practice. If a practice fails to use the correct code at the correct practice, this can result in patients being registered to the incorrect practice. So when a new GP joins a practice, they must wait for their application to join the practice to be accepted and processed by PCSE and a local GP code allocated on NHS. Practices who determine their own local GP code for a new doctor on their clinical system, when one has not been allocated on NHS, will result in GP links errors that means patient information is not received by NHS.
Thanks for running through those, Kat. So I suppose then with the introduction of pooled lists and thinking from a practice's perspective, what are the benefits to a practice then of moving to a pooled list?
So there is no need to bulk transfer patients when a GP leaves or joins a practice. This reduces workload for GP practices, NHS England and PCSE. Systems remain aligned as patients are only registered on one pooled GP code. Also, practices can divide patients' usual or named GP between all partners and salaried GPs on their clinical system locally by using the usual GP field with no requirement to notify PCSE. It also supports the NHS decommissioning programme and transformation of GP payments and cervical screening call recall services. There is no concept of individual GP lists on the SPINE PDS. So these individual GP codes will be lost when NHS is decommissioned. Also, there will be a reduction in new registrations. Amendments to existing patient and deduction requests go into manual exception, and this will result in a more efficient updating of patient records. And finally, there will be a reduction in errors on the GP link, as nothing will be sent under invalid GP codes, therefore reducing the number of unmatched transactions and translation errors. This will reduce the workload at the practice when errors require resolving, and also enable transactions to be updated in a more timely manner.
That's great, that. So there's actually some really good benefits to moving to a pooled list. So following on from all them benefits, Kat, why haven't more practices signed up to use a pooled list system?
So many practices believe moving to a pooled list will have a negative impact on the GP practice. Some of these reasons are that there could be an impact on referrals and prescribing. There could be an impact on the patient's usual or named GP. Both of these assumptions are incorrect. There is actually no impacts to these. The pooled list code is not a prescribing code, and as such should never appear on prescriptions. Each GP, partner or salaried within a practice will still have their own national prescribing code. There have been no reports of any adverse impact on GP practice workload or on patient care as a result of practices adopting the use of a pooled list. Practices on a pooled list have been shown to have less discrepancies in patient data and number of registered patients across the two national patient registration systems, NHS and SPINE.
That's actually really interesting to know. So thanks for running through those, Kat. And I suppose now, just finishing up, if I'm a practice and I'm looking to actually move to pool lists, how would I go about that? How do I sign my practice up to use pool lists?
So practices can request their list to be pooled at any time by sending an email to pcse.performerlists@nhs.net requesting a pooled list. The pooled list will be set up in NHS and the relevant details passed back to the practice so that it can be set up on the clinical system at the practice. On a mutually agreed date, patients should be bulk transferred on both NHS and the clinical system. Once completed, the practice should register all new patients to the pooled list and not to the individual GPs. If a GP has any concerns about moving to a pooled list, then we would recommend that the GP contacts us so that we can help them move to a pooled list.
Brilliant. Kat, thank you so much for going through that. We really appreciate it. And, just to re-emphasise to everyone that may be watching this video, if pool list is something you are interested in, again, you can send an email to pcse.performerlists@nhs.net. We will be more than happy to assist you in getting that sorted. But I think that is everything from me in this video. Kat, is there anything you'd like to add?
I think that's it from me too.
Perfect. And in that case, then just say thank you for watching.